wonderful afternoon here in the rolling hills of Tennessee, and about to enter the fray with two beloved heart minds of the day. Operation Rescue Earth, restoring sacred grids and hidden wisdom. And this is a conversation taken forward with Jane Evershed and Karina Allison. And Karina, some of you will remember, is a volcanologist and geomorphologist who maps volcanic formations and sacred sites and subtle planetary energies to reveal hidden geometrical structures connecting myth, consciousness, and the natural world. And beloved Jane Evershed, artist, activist, and researcher, fellow with the New Earth University. She studies how human and extra-human forces have manipulated Earth's energy grids. And she's working to expose distortions in sacred geometries and explore methods to restore the planet's original harmonious template. Jane, welcome you first.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks, Sasha.
Always, always, always. And let's bring in Karina. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, so happy to be here. Thank you.
Very good. So, friends, building upon the Molten Roots segment from a few months ago, today we're going to look a lot deeper into the mystical, scientific, and planetary dimensions touched on previously by Karina and Jane. And we're looking to reveal more about how Earth's sacred grids, volcanic energies, and ancient geometries have been disrupted, and why these hidden patterns show up in myths, crop circles, and modern symbols of power, arguably not least the incoming comets and alien craft and all the hoo-ha that may or may not be part of Project Bluebeam. We'll find out, I dare say. But they're still, either way, kind of celestial insignia, totems, and we should arguably look at them. Everything is connected to laws of attraction and the field architecture that exists between the dreamer and the dream. So let's discuss all of these different elements. We intend here to uncover the mechanisms behind this planetary takeover and explore what it truly takes to restore the Earth's natural balance. So producer Christy is in the back and going to be dropping in some images which will be triggered, I think, prompted by Karina. But first off, let's look at mapping and methodology. So Karina, this is to you. Last time you showed us your maps and you gave an overview of your process. Can you just summarize what it is that you did to create these maps and what you believe they reveal to us?
Thank you so much, Sasha. So Christy, if you could pop in, please. There's a image called 3 Geometries. So basically, to just very briefly summarize, I looked at the volcanic mythologies, the archetypes of different mythologies of the volcanoes around the world. And I mapped, well, there's 1,500 volcanoes that have been active, historically active. And of those, over 100 whose mythologies have endured through time. And this map is what came forth through mapping these different archetypes. And so in the center, in the Pacific Ocean, we have these archetypes that are the navel, or the mother frequency archetype of volcanoes. And over the Atlantic Ocean, this is the mythology called the Gates of Hell. And over Asia here is the world tree. And so basically, these are the multidimensional connections that we share. If you can, there's some more images here to just show how these are connected. So it's called the 3 connected there, Christy. And you can see there's the shapes themselves contain the symbolism that is held within those mythologies, and there's all kinds of geographic and political and cultural evolutions that are connected with these that obviously there's a lot to share here. And so I'll just keep it very brief and just refresh everyone's memory. If you haven't watched this was on the Lazarus Initiative. I forget which number that was, 49, I believe, Sasha. And that was last month. So that's right. Available on YouTube. And what do I think this means? And so at the end of the day, I think that this is mapping. I think to really understand what we're talking about here, we need to take a step back and talk about the holistic framework of Earth, because really this is a multi-dimensional map. It's not just here on the 3D. I really do believe this is multi-dimensional, and the Earth itself is multi-dimensional. And in geology, we have this framework that's, I liken it to Western medicine, where we have all of these different layers of Earth. And in the geologic frameworks, they're all separate. They're not connected. There's like the things happening in the ionosphere are separate from what's happening in the mantle. And what I think we need to embrace is a more holistic framework where everything is actually harmonically coupled. And so we're actually working with a living body of the Earth in the same way that we have a body. These different aspects of the physical and energetic body of Earth is connected. So what's happening in the ionosphere is actually directly connected with what's happening inside of the Earth. And these frameworks are showing us, they're giving us a guide to reconnect us with the original, what I would call Christic architecture of Earth. And Jane will share more about why and when and how did that possibly get corrupted. I think that we're both looking at natural, organic grids of the Earth, and also that they have been hijacked.
All right,
and I know that is a wild thing to say.
Let me jump in there. So, number one, Jane, just on what you saw on that plate, let's just discuss your feedback to that, but also move into the stolen Earth element. What does it truly mean to say that Earth was stolen at the level of her grid and geometry, not just through politics or history? Of course, the two are braided together. The morphogenetic field, the mythic fields, the galactic stories, the temporal storylines, all of these things, one way or the other, are fractal, scalar, and torsion. They're all connected and interconnected. But your take on that plate, and underscore what you mean by stolen Earth.
Well, first I'm going to start by saying that Karina's work is just incredible, because what it gave us was an actual map of the actual takeover of our planet. But I always like to be optimistic. So I really want to start out by saying that the CDT plates, the Cloister Doratura, has foretold that the crystal spiral would overtake this so-called Metatronic harness using this false geometry. And it already did in November of 2023. So don't go down into a big black sinkhole when you hear all this information. Just take it as, wow, we've come a long way. So what you just saw on that Christy put up was they didn't begin with taking over the Earth. They went for our cosmic organic creation template, which is the Cathara grid. And this is how they damaged it. And if you look closely, all of the pieces aligned with Earth that are in green there, you look at that math, the 1 + 1 is 2, 2 and 3 is 5, 5 and 8 13. That's the Fibonacci. Those are the Fibonacci numbers. That is what they used to worm their way into the entire template of Earth. I mean, they used stargates, geometry, the Fibonacci spiral, and all of these things to do it. And they didn't actually, in the beginning, they didn't steal the Earth through conquest at all. They stole it through grid hijack. That's how big this is. That's how important the Earth's grid is. And so they overlaid these false geometries on the Cathara grid, which is the original template linking Earth to source. But first, they had to destroy the Cathara grid before they could do that. So our original template was damaged first, even before they even got a hold of the Earth. Because when Tara fell, Earth became a little piece of Tara. And so the earth was born already seeded with this damaged imprint. So in other words, earth inherited a compromised grid, and that's why it was so ripe for the picking. And we can fix this. That's another long story. By controlling the stargates, the ley lines, the volcanoes, and the magnetic flows, they redirected Earth's energy into these siphon systems. I just want to say one more thing, Sasha. I want to say that the politics and the religion and the empire came later as a surface expression of their deeper theft.
Of course, but there's something more mythic that we need to look at here, and more subliminal, and that is the fact that everything is permission based in the omniverse. So what then was it? We are not victims of grid hacking. We clearly conjured, invoked, invited, received that monumental shift from the angelic template or the Cathar grid into that mutancy, which, as you rightly say, appears to have been superimposed over the angelic Catharic grid, and then through subterfuge and trickery of the highest cosmic order, subverted that Christic spiral dynamic or metric into the foundationally entropic Fibonacci sequence, which gave us the illusion of perfection and idealism and heaven on earth and perfect geometry and symmetry and what have you. But of course, was the source code of a mutant source code of entropy itself. But the question remains: we don't get grid hacked arbitrarily. Everything is permission based. Just speak to that piece before we move on.
Well, I don't exactly agree with you, Sasha. I'll just say that right up front, because Nibiru, full of its Anunnaki little monsters with their little Fibonacci fingers, dipped into our solar system grid. It's dimension 10 and dimension 4, which is our solar sun for the Earth. And they started siphoning and redirecting their creative, what they think is sacred. And they did this because they disconnected themselves from source. We never did that. We never disconnected. So they can never reach the 12th dimension. They cut off at 11.5. And all they want to do is keep us from getting there, because they can't harvest us at that rate. So I don't know that we brought that on ourselves.
We've got to get into that, because how else does anything happen? In the first instance, over many conversations, we've kind of arrived at this foundational understanding that the human, the angelic human, is the ultimate angelic Lucifer, in that sense, the most beloved of God, falling back into the void of creation, the cauldron of creation. Well, you're shaking your head, but the human is the point of redemption to the whole of this temporal universe, and that you need to explain to me how something just happens arbitrarily to us, because that for me is a really scary picture, that we can be spliced and diced, or a soul hacked, or a grid hacked by a force outside of the ambit of the Alpha Omega of the Atman, without us foundationally at the sublime oversoul level being witness to that, bearing witness to it, being phase conjugate with God, with the Godhead throughout, but allowing ourselves to be parasited in that sense and cannibalized, and in that sense sacrificed as part of the redemption to move all of those lower elemental forms back towards source. Surely that much we've arrived at.
Well, we've been trying to absolve, resolve, and evolve for a very, very long time. We're stuck in this soul trap cycle. But if you think about Tara being shattered into a million pieces, that is so big. I don't know how we can get our head around saying that's my fault. I know in the very, very beginning.
Fault is an absurd word to use, respectfully, my beloved. Fault is a silly word to be using. It's not fault. It's conjugation. phase conjugation, I mean, we are the point of redemption and absolution. So in that point, we are the ones receiving all these diabolical, monumental enterprises and agencies moving into us. I get that. But surely we stand sentinel at the threshold of Atman, knowing in our highest witness that we are the point of resolution and absolution and redemption for all of that cosmic shittery that's going on. Certainly that's my fixed position.
Okay, well, so then if a little girl is playing in her backyard and a horrible, evil person comes along and rapes her, you're saying she brought that on herself?
I think that's, again, an absurd way of putting it. What I would say is that at the super soul level, she is an angelic being who is self-sacrificing and an expression of her soul incarnation in order to become the light seed that will ultimately redeem that black hat, that dark heart, that Babylonian priest, that satanic ritualist. Yes, I've said this for years, since the Westminster Seedings, when I was fully immersed in ritual child sacrifice and understanding the mechanics of it, that yes, the baby on the slab is the one in control of the venue, ultimately at the super soul level. And in that sense, the imbibing of that blood is what creates the poison in the heart of darkness of the parasite. And then that becomes the thing that turns the quanta, that turns the wheel, and ultimately redeems and brings all the lowest detritus in cosmic expression back toward a source. And that is indeed how the mechanics of how the evolution of soul occurs in simple terms.
Well, it all started billions of years ago when the model for the universe, they took the victim and the victimizer, and then they had the third control group. And they decided to let that happen out there in the multiverse, the unicide. Yeah. That's where it all began. I wish Dave Emery was here right now. So it got into that rut of the victimizer, and soon the victimizers were running roughshod all over the universe, taking over planets and instilling their synthetic bullshit into organic, beautiful, loving realms.
Yes.
And we haven't stopped since. But now it's time for this to end. And it doesn't matter whether you think you're a victim or not at this point.
Correct.
It has been said that this is the override now. The Chris spiral has moved beyond the Fibonacci, and we're out of the woods, and we all need to get together and do our homework and check out our pre-ancient history and our galactic history and get with the program. And if Christy could show the Cathara grid, because that is our model that nobody ever showed us, nobody ever told us existed, and we never heard about in school. So if she has one of those, that would be great. There it is. See, our bodies line up with the Cathara grid, the cosmic Cathara grid, and the Earth Stargate locations. And this is where Karina comes so back into the picture, because a lot of her work, she didn't even know it when she was doing it, but it's overlapping the Stargates, and it was the Stargates that they targeted, especially Route 1, which is Kauai in Hawaii. And there's a few others. The Bermuda Triangle is one. I think in China, Ziyang, and these places have been taken over. And she didn't even know about this. And she's mapped it all out for us. It's just amazing what her work has revealed.
Beautiful stuff. Karina, let me bring you back in here. Gates of Hell triangle. One of your map formations is the Gates of Hell triangle, which doesn't align with the natural Earth grid. So what does this suggest about forced or hijacked geometries?
So if we could bring that up, Christy, there is a slide called just Gates of Hell, GOH.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is this isosceles triangle. It's parallel to the equator, and there is another image here. If world grid, Christy, if you could pull that up, please. And you can see here how this is the world tree, and it just pops right in. It's an exact fit, but this is the Icaso dodecahedron grid. And this is the navel here in the center that just pops straight up. And so that gates of hell just doesn't quite fit. I actually did do the math on this, and I calculated it was, gosh, I shouldn't pull that up off the top of my head because I don't know it exactly, but many millions of years, if you calculate back from the way that the mid-Atlantic ridge is opening up, that where that actually would have fit into the grid. And I do believe that these 3 points are actually mapping the Christic architecture, because when you look at scalar waves, you have, it's a 3-phasic flow. And you can look at it as masculine, feminine, and a central channel. You know, we can look at it as our body itself is geometry is neutral. Like, that's how I look at it. The geometry is neutral. It can host a flow of energy that's aligned with the Christic flow, which is the scalar waves, which are triphasic, or it can also host the biphase, which is the Fibonacci or the fallen grids, right? And so I do believe that there's an aspect of this, what we call the gates of hell, that's organic, that's innate, that's like this masculine return point for the scalar fields, which are originating in the center of the earth. And I think it's really interesting that it doesn't quite fit. It has the Bermuda Triangle is right on there. It's got all of these powerful places that CERN, you know, the Vatican is right on this grid. The powerful cities in Europe are very close to this grid. And so I think this is showing us evidence that there is some aspect of this organic architecture that has been known through time by powerful leaders, and with technology that we can't understand, post-Atlantean technology that has harnessed these return points. You know, these are geographies on the earth. They're not just single points, but they're whole regions. And so I think that particular return point is where the patriarchy was installed, you know, for lack of a better word. And it is the toxic masculine, and that's we see it in history, you know, the recent history of everything emerging from that area of the world and sort of the colonial takeover that we are dealing with the impacts of today, unvelcroing ourselves from those systems. And so I think it's showing that both are coexisting, honestly. I think it is an overlay. There is an innate harmonic, coherent signature that is being manipulated and hijacked. And I think some of these like geomagnetic anomalies like the Bermuda Triangle are giving us hints as to how those technologies are working.
Very good, very good. I mean, just on that, on the toxic patriarchy bit, of course, none of us are going to disagree with that being the more recent arc of our kind of historical and anthropological reference. But it's curious enough, I literally just came from a lunch a moment ago before this began with a top general, Pentagon clearance, and 2 hours lunch. And he'd come 4 hours to meet with me here. And one of the things we were discussing was ritual Satanism, as he and they understand in the Pentagon, the military basement, based on the hard science of what they know through these special operations connected to Trump in recent years, excavating the satanic basement. And the general had one very interesting thing to say to me. He said, do you know what? The baseline of all of this, women are in control. Women are driving and are in control of the ritual, sacrificial, blood and adrenochrome harvesting aspect of that darkest, deepest storyline in the basement. Of course, I'd kind of read things in the past connected to the dark queens and the whatever they call themselves, the dark mothers of darkness or whatever. But I thought that was an interesting counterpoint to the commonly accepted mythos of patriarchy and toxic patriarchy. And I wonder how that Black Widow spider element also interacts with the geometry of what we're talking about. Any thoughts on that, Jane?
Absolutely, Sasha. Like everything, they inverted the mother.
Yeah.
And our world would be a completely different world if we had the abundance and nurturing of the feminine energy and the feminine signature woven throughout every level of society, but it has been kept back. Then they never underestimated the power of women. Make no mistake. They know exactly how powerful they are. So if they can invert that, turn it around and throw it back at the populace to their advantage, that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, very good. Very good. My take as well. Okay. Jane, whilst you're there, invader strategy. Can you map the Earth invader strategy, and what did they target first? What or whom did they target first? And when did this takeover begin?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to Karina and say her work is so stunning because she was mapping volcanoes. And that, along with the stargates, it was the volcanoes that they were targeting immediately right after the fall of Tara, because the volcanoes are the motherboard. Then after that, they went to the ley lines, which they overlaid with Metatronic grids, redirecting the planetary currents. And then after that was the solar gate hijack, which is sphere 10 and not 4 on the Cathara grid.
Yeah.
And they tethered Nibiru frequencies to it. This was 25,000 years ago. And the fall of Tara, to put everything in perspective, was 550 million years ago. So, but when they got to the solar gate, this was the big one. This is when they inserted the Fibonacci math through the sun. And the big point that I want to get across about this is that, everyone always says, oh, the shells are so beautiful. The flowers with the Fibonacci, oh, they're so beautiful. Well, because the sun is responsible for all life on Earth, and it was hijacked. And so the creation code came through to Earth, creating those. And then everyone thinks that's organic when it's actually not.
Yeah.
And then after the solar gate hijack through Nibiru frequencies, and by the way, you've got Anunnaki driving Nibiru, right?
Yes.
The cultural overlays, and this is now the last 5,000 years, the calendars, zodiacs, religion, architecture, science, all of that. So, I knew one day I would get to the bottom of this, Sasha. I started out with the Renaissance and all of that, and you went all the way through it with me. And then I worked my way back, and I finally got to the end of the riddle,
Very good. Very good. Karina, myths and sacred sites. Your research shows that these volcanic geometries overlapping with myths and sacred sites. Why do you think so many ancient stories preserve the same patterns?
It's such a great question, Sasha. And I think this goes back to the subtle attunement that we have with our bodies as this amazing technology. We live in the most amazing technology that exists, and we have this ability to sense and to interact with and to co-create with these subtle energies. And I think many cultures around the world were able to co-create and read the energies of the earth. And so these sites, when I first started this work, I really puzzled over this, because it was like these places in our historical perception are so far apart and there's no contact between them. And so how can similar places geographically isolated from each other come up with the same stories? And I think it's just very simple in that they are connecting with the energy of the earth. And there's certain codes, there's certain memories that are contained in different parts of the world, different geographies around the world that are broadcasting, in a sense, different frequencies. And so we feel that with our bodies. For me, it really brings home the point of the connection with humanity and how important that is, that our bodies are, we are part of this earth body, and our bodies have been created and evolved to be in harmony with this earth body. And the farther away that we go from that, the less sovereign we actually become.
Yeah, exactly right. So Jane, we spoke a little bit about crystal spiral, Fibonacci, counterpoint. What role did the replacement of Earth's natural golden mean spiral with a distorted Fibonacci spiral actually play in the invaders' takeover, so to speak?
Well, the Fibonacci spiral only approximates it because it's always collapsing into
Yeah,
finite cycles.
yeah.
And I know you know this, but for the benefit of the audience, we have to say this because all misery, distortion, lack, all of that is because this Fibonacci base 10 mathematics evolving around that damn spiral is responsible for all of the pain, the suffering, the war, because they have to feed off that energy and feed off us. And if we were all following the Chris spiral, breathing in the Chris spiral manner, even that nobody ever hears about either, we can heal our own DNA. We become sovereign. We are able to ascend and get out of here and away from them and their grip on us. There's just so many things. Human DNA was entrained to the false base 10 math strand activation.
Yes, yes,
No?
yes, exactly.
And then the other thing is we used to have 6 fingers.
Speak for yourself, you duck-billed platypus.
Seriously, Sasha, you know, when AI first started rendering human beings, that AI was drawing them with 6 fingers, even because they were going back.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
that was the model. And because that was base 12. You know how we always go 5 plus 5 is 10?
yeah,
Yep. And 6 toes each on each foot, too. So there you go. That just shows you how deeply we've been effed with on our, not only our DNA, our entire makeup of our absolute body, and then also replacing the Chris spiral with the Fibonacci too had a huge effect on architecture, music, you know, all of these things. It was a mathematical core takeover, turning infinite creation into finite extraction, not
yes, yes, yes.
creation.
Well, on that theme, I still remember that the image that I asked. I did my tour, last tour, using a series of images that I generated through AI. Of course, I do everything that way now. But I asked AI to generate an image showing me every single creature that's existed in the on the Earth plane,
Wow.
in the history of time. This fiction called time, and this was the image. And if you go down and drill down and magnify into this image, you see that it's got thousands upon thousands of microscopic creatures. But the interesting thing was that car, that vehicle there with the 6 wheels, proving your point.
AI doesn't always get it right.
Very good. Okay. Now, crop circles, an obvious one to speak about. Karina, crop circles such as the Barbary Castle Formation, and I think there's an image coming up, show that the Fibonacci spirals attach to tetrahedrons. So do you see this as evidence of overlay placement onto the natural spiral system?
Great. Thank you so much. Christy, if you could please, yes, that's the one. So I'm so happy to have a chance to talk about this some more, because this was really, when I was doing this work, really sealed the deal for me. And this crop circle came to me very synchronistically. I dreamed about it. I had a book show up in my life with it on the cover. I had a friend tell me about this particular crop circle. And so I overlaid it. And when I first overlaid it, I tried to make the tetrahedrons match, and they weren't quite the right size. And then this overlay came forth, which you see in the photo here, with the on top of this the navel there in the Pacific Ocean. And I have in the crop circle itself, there's a red circle with an arrow pointed to it. And so this is one of the most famous crop circles. It's from 1991 in Barbary Castle. And it was one of the earliest and very well done, and there is this noticeable kink there where that red arrow is pointing with that red circle. And when I overlaid this with the navel here in the Pacific Ocean, that
Yeah.
kink aligns perfectly with, you can see these volcanoes, this line of islands that goes up from New Zealand and kind of goes up and down around this blue line. Well, that kink lines up to where those islands emerge from this geometry. And the mythology of those islands was the birthplace of Polynesia. And so I found that to be very interesting. So that was the first like synchronicity I found with this crop circle. And then some of the other things I found were, if you look at these geometric features on the corners, right? So you have like this half flower of life at the top. You've got this circle with the line down the center, and then this jagged looking spiral, right? So each of these is more or less like what you would call a metatronic geometry, which is that it's a fallen geometry. It's not totally complete. The flower of life at the top, if you could pull that back up there for a second, Christy, I'm going to just spend a couple more minutes on it. The flower of life aligns perfectly with Hawaii. Hawaii is the longest, oldest hotspot that we have on Earth. And so in many ways, it is the anchor point of the Pacific Ocean. It is the anchor of life force on Earth. It's continually erupting for as long as we have evidence of. And so that wheel of life feels really fitting, right? But it's also a half geometry. And then when you look at the jagged spiral, that actually connects with Easter Island. And I thought it was really interesting how the jagged spiral looks a lot like the plate boundary, that mid-ocean ridge that Easter Island is anchoring over there. And it is also Fibonacci. So that is the like sort of Fibonacci spiral, where it's not the Christic spiral. And then we come over to the circle with the line down the center. And in the picture of the crop circle itself, you can see there's a small line that goes into that circle, and that goes to the actual center point. So that line, the long line, is a little bit longer than the radius of the circle.
Right.
So it is also not a perfect geometry. And when you put that radius with that exact scale that we're using, that radius is exactly the length of New Zealand.
Very
so
interesting.
here so we have this, so you could, like, if you take that black line, that's, gosh, I wish I had my pointer, but yeah, you can just imagine that black line on the Pacific Ocean map there where it's overlaid, and you can just move that to New Zealand. It's exactly like
Fascinating.
Almost no error. It's exactly the same length. And so for me, this was such a guiding force for me in this project. And I've sat with it for a really long time. And actually through these conversations with Jane, these pieces make more sense. And then through the top of that crop circle, it looks like an antenna, right? Like you've got these concentric rings where it's like, right away when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is showing that these triangles, these tetrahedrons, these geometries there's something real. There's something, they're broadcasting something. There's some frequency that's being emitted from these places that maybe we can't perceive with our limited senses, but that doesn't make them less real. And so I find this to be really intriguing evidence that yes, maybe there is some kind of overlay, like these siphon grids become more of a real possibility. Like it actually really seems to be pointing exactly to that. And something important to name as I've been sitting with all of this is that I think that the life force of Earth itself is uncorruptible. Like, and as far as back to that permission piece, like I believe there's an aspect of Gaia as an ascended master who must have at some point given permission on some level. Oh, we've lost Sasha.
Just keep going.
Okay. That she must have given permission at some point to be this location. I feel like Gaia Earth is this location where we are working out the impacts of duality, of a dualistic perception, of a linear time perception. And as we work out the distortions of that, we're creating more coherence through humanity into the earth realm, and that coherence is rippling out. And so it is part of this bigger evolution on a much larger scale.
Very good. Eye in the triangle geometry. Jane, what is the deeper meaning of the eye in the triangle geometry, and why does it keep reappearing in both ancient overlays and modern power symbols like the US dollar bill?
Exactly. Just before I go and answer that, Sasha, I just have to say that in Karina's geometry, she has nailed right at the apex of that equilateral triangle. She nailed Kauai, Hawaii. And that is the root of the Kathara grid that we keep looking at. That's the root sphere, the root node, which is actually parallel Earth. So, it just amazes me all the time how close she came to mapping their damage that they've done.
Yeah.
So anyway, about the eye, the main thing, it symbolized illumination through Stargate vision. And here we go again with Stargates and how they are matching all her work. There's the one at Kauai that I just mentioned, and there's one in the Bermuda Triangle, which is the Earth matchup for the cosmic grid, the cosmic Kathara grid. So and she has the tetrahedron where she's mapped it, the eye and the triangle. It's just a 2D mask of a 3D hijack geometry, and the invaders recoded it into this emblem of control, and they put it on pyramids, ziggurats, modern seals, like you said. They're just training humanity to revere the takeover sigil rather than the living Christ spiral sigil.
Christy, remove the slide, please. They're just lingering a little too long for my comfort. Terrific. Any other symbols that we should be mindful of that populate the kind of mythic landscape of the high street, incorporating that pyramidal structure with the all-seeing eye?
Well, it's the Fibonacci through and through and through. That's their little magic trick spiral. And beyond that, then, they took all of these things and put them into corporations and using them for their corporate logos throughout industry. And we know BlackRock's now just about taken over the whole planet.
No, BlackRock have been conjuring the chemical demon at Burning Man in the Black Rock Desert, don't you know? That's what those motherfuckers do, flying on their private jets in a Babylonian orgiastic bestial fantasy, and literally using this extraordinary synthetic molecule invasion through MDMA and fucking 5-MeO DMT and ketamine and all of these kind of happy enlightenment drugs, and conjuring, spiritualizing, moreover, the chemical demon, something I'm about to do as a deep dive with Anna Naturalista and Dr. Paul Levy, Watika and all of that. But indeed, it's very, very serious stuff. And that all-seeing eye is kind of, it's been that extraordinary totem, which has indeed continued to pervade and permeate every aspect of culture and society and the flow of and the currency of human beings and of money and so on and so forth. It is somewhat terrifying. Do you think that that's in recession now? Do you think that arcane, colossal, satanic totemism is moving into recession now that this emergence of a new light field and a new vibral geometry is emerging, that it naturally brings those satanic totems into dissolution?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Sasha. When that crystal spiral overrode the Fibonacci, it began. That was 2 years ago. And also, we were all waking up. Our DNA is being upgraded by the hour through the Schumann resonance, the sun. And the second sun, the diamond white sun, is the main one on the Kathara grid. That is peeking through now, and it's the override. And it also overrides the black sun that they put up there to block out that DNA upgrade that we were supposed to get.
Yeah.
And the most amazing thing about that eye is that Karina found it she found the damn eye right there in the middle of the whole picture. It's just amazing.
Yes, incredible. Okay, let's move on. Volcano myths and energy systems. So, Karina, this is to you. Volcano myths often describe gods, ancestors, and of course the underworld portals. How do you see these myths connecting to planetary grids and hidden energy systems?
So again, I think this is just pointing us to our multidimensional connection, and that our bodies have this incredible ability to tune in on all these different levels, and that there is much more to this three-dimensional world than, there's more than just the three-dimensional world, I should say. That these are realms within the Earth body, and that there is this interface happening here between our bodies and this body of the Earth, and that we are ascending together. And this, for me, it just keeps coming back again and again. It's easy to get lost in the headiness of intellectually trying to understand all of these different pieces. And the only way I've actually been able to integrate what's really going on is to let it land in my body and to be with it in that very somatic process, which takes time. We have to receive. There's an inner knowing. It's like this return to our somatic knowing.
Yes.
It's a discernment. We need to be in our discernment more than ever these days. And so we are living in a realm where there's both regenerative flows of this Christic architecture that Earth is built with. And there is this siphon grid that's very real. And I would say to some degree, all of us are plugged into it. Some more than others, but it's just the byproduct of the culture that we've created.
Yes.
And so that we can be sovereign in our choice. We can learn to discern when energy is regenerating us and when it's draining us, and to cultivate a Christic body. It can look like any form that your body looks like right now is a Christic body. It has the innate architecture and intelligence to operate in a much more regenerative way. And I think the more collectively that we're tuning in and being in awareness and choice, so that we're not just, again, it's like what we don't see can hurt us. Like what we don't see and what we don't know can be taking advantage of us. So to name it, to bring awareness to it, and to be in sovereign choice around it are some of the most powerful things we can do. And
Very
they're
good.
real. They have an impact.
Indeed. Jane, if the false geometries were the entry point of takeover, what does it mean to begin restoring the organic Kathara template today? I mean, the hard mechanics of that restoration. Obviously, everything is keyed into actualization of the human consciousness in order to begin that resurrection of the angelic genome, so to speak, and that then creates morphogenetic output, which braids into the ethers and grants the permissions for the emergence and convergence of the new light geometry, which dissipates the fallen light of Atlantis and activates the noosphere and so on and so forth. But in real hard terms, what are the mechanics of that activation process of the true grid?
The first thing, Sasha, absolutely is to recognize it. You've got to recognize that false overlay. You have to talk about it. The false pyramids, the zodiacs, the grids, all of it. The false chakra thing is also a big overlay, because we have it. Our bodies are connected to this Kathara grid. So that's number one. Because when you understand it and you know it, you can dissipate it too. Because Source made it very, very simple. And they made it very, very, very complex, so that we'd be all flabbergasted and confused and, confusion all the way. And you never feel like you can get on top of it all. There's so much information. So we have to, first of all, realign with the 12 sphere Kathara grid, which is these three, the earth, us, and the grid. It's the Trinity template of human, earth, and cosmic. There it is. Thank you, Christy. And then the big secret is this spiral breath. I had never even heard that you could even breathe in spirals, but that is the Christic spiral, and it works on a DNA level, genetic level. So this is how we reset the grids in our bodies and on the planet. And it means shifting from this finite siphon geometry back to the infinite source of geometry. And I know it sounds so simple.
Okay, so magnetic fields and consciousness. Karina, your work also explores the Earth's magnetic field and the hotspots. And how do you see that these volcanic geometry, so to speak, act as transmitters that influence human consciousness? And what are the next steps in this work?
Yeah, thank you, Sasha. So I think it's so important to name all of this as an electromagnetic system. And when I talk about the Earth as a holistic, harmonically coupled system, it is through the electromagnetic channels as all communication, where the Earth is communicating within her layers. And so that's just like our bodies. It's like every impulse from our brain is sending an electromagnetic signal that is telling our bodies what to do. All communication, whether it's coming out of our mouth or if it's radio waves that our antennas are picking up, all of that is electromagnetic. And so the magma inside of the Earth is creating the magnetic field, and the magma channels themselves are electromagnetic. And the volcanoes, you can think of them as like modulators here on the surface. And so when we think about this bigger grid, I think about the volcanoes as being they're portals. They're places where when you're at an erupting volcano, I don't know if either of you have actually stood on the rim of an erupting volcano. You can feel the energy is so palpable. It moves through your body. I mean, it is unmistakable. And so it is these are these points where energy, and I would call it plasma energy from the Earth, are being transformed, and they're bringing that communication from inner Earth to the surface realm. So you can almost give them as bringing old memories up to the surface to create new land and new imprints into the atmosphere and onto the lithosphere here. And so as far as that impact with consciousness, we are so connected to this holistic system, like far more than I think most people realize. And we can also plug into it really easily. And so when we are aligning our intelligence with that earthly intelligence, it's like that's the ultimate biohacking, right? It's like that's the ultimate way of we can heal, we can regenerate. You know, these flows are accessible to us. Again, it's a choice. We can choose what our geometry of our body is going to host. Is it going to host regenerative energy, or is it going to host decaying, finite life energy?
Yes.
Yeah. As far as the next steps, if I could just one more piece there. As far as the next steps, because I think there's much more to these maps, and I think there's a whole new map emerging where volcanoes are creating resonant families where they're communicating with each other and with the evolution of consciousness. And that hasn't been explored. It hasn't been mapped. How would you to measure the signature frequency of a volcano and understanding what that means and how we can engage with it as a mythologic archetype. So there's codes the mythologies are holding that are mirrored as volcanoes. And so for me, that's the next step, is really bridging some of these gaps so that it becomes more tangible and something that is a much more practical tool for us to use moving forward.
Very good. Very good. Bringing me to closing comment. Jane, remedy for humanity and planet Tara. Once the geometry of takeover is exposed, and we've explored the aspect of revelation and how that is palpably occurring, and you've given it a dateline over the last 2 years. What does true remedy for humanity and this plane of existence look like?
I feel like I kind of addressed that earlier, but I wanted to just add, if you don't mind, Sasha, I just want to add about the volcanoes. I believe it's Earth's way of releasing all of these distortions and the distorted energies. I had to
Very
say
good.
that.
Very good.
And also the I said earlier, we have to expose the hijacked geometry. Don't just sit back and let all these scientists, talk about the Fibonacci. Say no, stop right there. Whenever I was doing graphics with AI, the AI would sneak in the base 10 mathematic designs, the flower of life, the Fibonacci spiral. I have examples of it. It's so deeply embedded in
Yes.
everything. So
Yes.
look for it, because those symbols are so powerful.
Mm.
And we have to practice and embody the Christic golden mean spiral. We reconnect our human DNA and reconnect to the Earth stargates and the cosmic currents. This is Operation Rescue Earth, no less than that. We're not fighting. We're just rethreading the organic grid of creation. And please don't let me go without Christy showing Prince Charles and Camilla. Go ahead. Oh, here we go. So they know this. These crowns represent the apex of our Kathara grid. You've got the pineal and the pituitary. By the way, the pineal doesn't work by itself. You have to have the masculine and feminine electromagnetic. And it's got the third eye in it. It's got the diamond white sun, and then the 13th soul seal that they can never reach. And they're pretending that they're angelic humans and that they can wear that, and somehow they can get by with all their evil.
Wow. That that is a tremendous way to end this on. Curiously enough, I've in the last 2 years in my touring across America and Europe, and Africa for that matter, my first slide on my 3-hour keynote is King Charles seated in his ermine with that same crown on his head. As the acme of the distortion and the perversion of the angelic, that it emerges into this dithering great auntie kind of guy who, by best accounts, loves hugging trees and is a thoroughly decent chap, ambling around Balmoral Estate. That whole theater is so utterly cynical. What you just said with that symbology that's written into it. Prince Charles, King Charles, becomes I guess, the highest living human totem of Cronus, of the Archonic, of the Lords of Time, Fibonacci. It all collapses down into the living human. How do you think it is? And this is just a curious question on the side. How do you think it is that the weight of such inordinate and extraordinary and supernatural, satanic and luciferic chaos, how do you think that cascades down into the vessel of a Queen Elizabeth II or a King Charles or a King William, for that matter? How is it that they can withstand and withhold that unbearable weight in the ancestral blood, the cosmo ancestral blood? And I would extrapolate to and look at the popes in Rome and look how venal and twisted and distorted these creatures become. Almost immediately they take office, they start crumpling and they become decayed and start rotting in broad daylight. That's a fact. We've seen it happen. Certainly with Ratzinger, with John Paul, and with this Jesuit twat that just shuffled off his mortal coil. So we've seen how those people can inhabit that station, that office, and the unbearable weight of that crumples them. But it must be a great deal worse if you're a King Charles or a Queen Elizabeth II or a King William, surely, because it's not just an office that they're walking into to assume. They're actually carrying it in their blood. Speak to that for a moment. I'm fascinated by the answer.
Well, they're trained all their lives to hold that position in public. They're completely different when they're in private. I call them the human hybrids, the foot soldiers of the Anunnaki, Jehovian, Draconian infiltrators and earth invaders. They do the dirty work on the ground. They put their face out front. They have to show a really good look, and they keep it up as much as they can. And of course, we all know what they eat and what they drink in order to maintain that fresh facade, no matter how hard it gets. And they're simply not human. They're not angelic, and they have no soul, and they have no heart. So I would say that people who don't think that they're angelic, yes, you are. If you loved anybody, you are. And you can be damn sure that those hybrids running around taking over the world do not know even what love is. All of their wives, partners, everything are all manufactured facades to make them look good. And we've seen that recently with Macron and his so-called wife. It all fell apart. France is falling apart, and he never, ever had a love there. He's a homosexual, and she's a man.
Right. Disclaimer on Lazarus. Disclaimer, that came from Jane, and I'll give you her address. Guys, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight. Karina, thank you so much for the work that you do. I think it's so revelatory, and I think we have no choice but to continue taking this conversation forward. And beloved Juanita, I don't know if you're in Costa Rica or if you're in the US. Where are you now?
Costa Rica.
Great. Well, it becomes you. What to say? Thank you both for joining us on Lazarus today.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Sasha. Bye, Karina.